Welcome to Ask Earl Anything. This is the show where your questions make the show. If I don't have questions, I don't have a show. I will say I have a lot of questions this time. It's been 2 months since I've done a show, and a real show. I did one right at the end of August, and you all know it. I called it The Great Sadness. My son passed away on August 15th, and it kind of turned my life around a little bit. But part of the grieving process is coming out of the grieving and moving on to, you don't really move on, I'll say it that way. I'm not moving on from my son dying right now. I'm moving forward. So the motto for me each day is I get up and thank God for life, and thank God for friends, and I thank God for the people that reach in every day. And by the way, there's been a lot in the drum community that have reached into me. And that is a big deal, believe it or not. So I do appreciate each and every one of you that have reached in. They've been kind with the comments. As I've been slowly putting more video content out, my enthusiasm level for life has kind of waned a little bit. I wouldn't say I'm not enthusiastic about life. What I would say is that there's no snap in my step, you know? But when I'm in the zone with people, I'm having fun. And this past weekend, I had the honor of hanging out with Mike Fasano, who's a friend now, and some of you became my friend through this show, Ask Earl Anything, believe it or not. And Mike invited me to his show, Tiger Army. I actually got to do an Earl Asks Anything segment, and with him and one of the drummers on the tour with him, J.R. Kurtz, and we had a lot of fun with that. And Mike was wonderful. He showed up, he handed me a couple pairs of sticks, this being one of them, you know. He handed me a drum head for my snare. He said, you should try this on your snare. And he handed me this Armand Ride right here, 19-inch, and just made my day because it really sounds nice with my Zildjian. So guys like Bryan Corey are going to be digging some Zildjian stuff in my videos in the future. A little bit more. I'm having a lot of fun with this cymbal this weekend. But that's the kindness of the community. I mean, another guy who's been really kind in the community has been Michael Perry. Michael Perry has called and reached out and sent a card and really blessed my heart. And I really wish Drummer's Den was still around, really, the way it used to be, where we could go to Google Plus and just hang out. It's a lot tougher in that app that Tony and Michael have, you know, Drummer's Den, all classic drum covers, you know, they meld it together. I go there once in a while, but to be honest, it's easier for me to watch on Instagram and YouTube, where most people kind of find me. That's the world I kind of live in, the YouTube world and my Instagram world. And Instagram's a different thing because a lot of guys just bounce in for a minute or two, you know. Instagram's also a world where I have some of my personal life in on my stuff too. So I've been switching my Instagram off of my drum talk, drum lesson page, which is really kind of dormant right now because I'm not really doing any lessons at this point. Even though I'm available for lessons, I just haven't been pursuing. Life has taken a different road in 2019. A lot was wrapped up in my son's life, and his what happened that year was way more than just dying in a car accident. There was a lot more that went on that year, and we were trying to be there for him and going through a divorce and a lot of other things. So there was a lot going on in 2019 family-wise, but even worse than that and more than that was it's not worse than that, it's definitely more than that, is busy in business, my day job, you know. It's been growing and changing. So that's kind of taken me away from the YouTube world a little bit. But somehow, most of you didn't realize that because I have a way of making drum covers which is kind of formulaic for Earl. Not formulaic for others, formulaic for Earl. See, what I do with drum covers is I basically play what I want to play, number one. I play songs I love to play, number two, or songs I think I would love to play. I have a very strong studio template that I work from, which really makes my drums kick from square one. I have a kit that's constantly set up and mic'd all the time. Even if it changes, it's been dialed in for what I do, because the mic set up in the templates for my Logic. They're the same every time, and I just kind of go there and I tweak. So I can make drum covers a lot faster than a lot of other guys because I have the space. I never have to change anything up. This is my world. We call this the Cave Sanctuary Sound Studio. And I've had the joy of doing lots of fun things in the last 2017 to now. I mean, I've worked on album projects and songs for people, and I'm working on some drum tracks for my church now, and there's and other guys' project from the church, other projects. So there's a lot going on and a lot of fun I'm having. But somehow the YouTube looks like it hasn't waned. But in actuality, I haven't been doing as much YouTube as I used to do. And since August 15th, life has changed. So I'm trying to get the swing back in my step and moving forward. And music is one of the ways it comes out. If I'm not playing music, then I'm really into a funk or a depression. And I haven't allowed myself to get there completely. Because there are moments in grief where you just go into depression. That's part of the 4 stages of grief, you know. You go through anger. You go through the sadness part of grief. And you go through the depression part of grief where it takes you down. And then you eventually gets to the acceptance point. I'm not quite at acceptance, but I'm moving forward towards it. And doing this show this month is now going to be a big step forward towards it. So I'm hoping to bring Ask Earl Anything back into the fold. That's what this long introduction was about. I have a lot of questions that are left over from July because I was promising something in August, and the week I was going to cut it's when this all changed. My life changed. So I actually started it twice, but I wasn't real happy for some reason, and I didn't really get into it and do it. So I'm going to start with the top and keep going, and we'll see how long this show goes. I rarely do 2 shows, but this is going to be a long one for those of you that love my shows, and those of you who don't, I guess you'll be out in 2 minutes like normal, or whatever, or you'll find what you're looking for. So the first one comes from Bill Hosmer. He wrote me way back in July sometime, and he said, I hope this email finds you doing well, my friend. I had posted drum videos and covers on YouTube from time to time. Over the past 6 months or more, I haven't been posting. However, recently I did record some, and I was unable to publish them due to copyrights. Looks like YouTube is really cracking down on things. So my question to you is, what can I do about this? Looks like the only thing I can do is reach 1,000 subscribers and then apply for the YouTube partnership. This is a crazy time since I only post for enjoyment from time to time. Anyway, let me know what you are doing and what the solutions are or may be for this challenge. Well, Bill, I don't think YouTube copyright has anything to do with you having over 1,000 subscribers. I don't believe. I think YouTube copyright has to do with publishing companies. And the truth of the matter is, and somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, as you all know, one of the things that's true about me is I don't know everything. But my world, I'm actually finding some of my covers that I've been doing from other artists that weren't allowing me to cover their stuff are now opening up the gates. One being Just You and Me by Chicago, which I actually put out because I found out it got accepted. My appeal on Instagram got accepted, so I thought, why not try putting it out again on YouTube, and it worked. Publishing companies are weird. I don't really understand the rhyme or reason to it, especially when they can put ads on your covers, and if somebody does watch it, they're getting ad revenue from it. So I don't really understand their rationale to this. And they're making money no matter what. It's not a lot of money, but it's something. It's another view on their song. So I'm not everything you see monetized on my drum covers, for the most part, that are popular covers, are the publishing company gets it. I don't really get it. It's only Ask Earl Anything and my other covers that are not under the publishing company, because there's some drum tracks that I have that are music -1, and that's a label, and I don't know why that label hasn't taken advantage of the fact that they can make a few extra bucks by. I'm not trying to give them any ideas. I don't think anybody from music -1 is actually watching my show, but it's an old back catalog that they basically pressed into CDs that I use some of those tracks from. I just did one called Ove Como Va, which is a Santana song, but it's definitely not the Santana version. And a bazillion other people have done the song. And it was kind of a strange Music Minus One record I played as a kid on an album. And it was called Drum Star, and my daughter gave it to me. That's what got me into the YouTube thing, to be honest. Why I started doing covers and drumless drum track covers. And I just was having so much fun that summer. I was kind of in my transition. And I've talked about that. And so anyhow, I don't know what's rhyme or reason about publishing. I have no idea. All I can say is there are going to be certain artists that are not going to let you put their songs up there. Paul Simon, Bob Dylan, Chicago for a while, but now I'm slipping Chicago songs in again. I got 2 more coming up in the future. They're pretty obscure tunes too. They're not the kind that are the #1 hits. So when I put these 2 Chicago songs up, only real Chicago guys are going to dig them. But I put them up there for other reasons. One song's called Listen, and Listen's all about listen to what's going on in the world around us. Our world's really going nuts right now. We're coming into an election year. This is just crazy town. By the way, I have no political affiliation. I'm not doing politics right now. I'm just saying, listen to the world around us. It is crazy right now. I have to dial that stuff out. That stuff, I have no headspace for that right now. The other thing is, what's this world coming to? Again, it's another old Chicago song from right around the end of the protest era of the Vietnam War. But it really speaks to this time. So those are the reasons why I'm picking songs. I pick songs that are saying stuff right now. A lot of my recent covers have been that, or the Jeff Porcaro week, which turned into Jeff Porcaro 2 weeks, which ended up being 5 covers, not 4. I started originally with 4. I did one more Black Friday, which my camera died. That's a whole other discussion. But Bill, I hope that helps you. I don't really have the answer to this one. So, all right, here's the next one. A guy named Mike Seibel wrote me. He actually got me on an email. He said, your videos on cymbals are particularly interesting since I'm trying to figure out what I like and what cymbals to buy. I listened to the Zildjian K custom high definition 22-inch ride on Henry Mears' YouTube channel. He's another famous YouTube dude. I watch him sometimes. He does a lot of that jump cut stuff. Sounded really good. Harry had recommended this as a go-to cymbal. I found it, thought it was a good deal online, and bought it. Unfortunately for me and my bandmates cannot stand it. It sounds so flat, lifeless, quiet. It's almost like no one can hear me play. I play jazz, rock, and super loud. Not super loud, but I use regal tip nylon jazz sticks. I'm not a head basher. I'm more of a finesse, I would say, like Take 5, Clapton the Core, Billie Jean. Can You Hear Me Knockin', Santana, Europa, and our typical songs that we play, among others. It was just surprising that I would be that disappointed. Is there something about this particular Zildjian that has a unique in its sound, or lack of? Do cymbals sound very tremendously within the exact brand model? That is, still labeled clearly, so no doubt it's not the wrong model. Did I get a dud? Well, Mike, that is an awesome question. Back in the old days, or being an old school guy like Mike Fasano would say about me, my old schoolness says you go buy your cymbals by tapping on them. I mean, I'll be honest, this Carope ride, I basically went through 40 ride cymbals at Steve Maxwell's drum shop in New York in 2014. The summer of 2014, I was in New York City. I was looking for a Sabian artisan ride. The Zildjian ride, this Carope, was less money than the artisan rides. I went through exactly 40 artisan rides trying to find an artisan ride that sounded just like this one, this Carope. Because I played this Carope and it was magic. It was the sound I was looking for a long time. Now, I will tell you, your ears change. Okay? This is definitely not my go-to sound for me today. But it is kind of a complete, really jazz, funky, dark sound that I've always looked for. I've grown to understand that certain songs require different cymbals. Matter of fact, that's the story with this Armand ride from Mike Fasano. He bought this ride thinking he was going to use it on Tiger Army, on some different things. He actually used it on a a video of a YouTube channel, Paiste. I think they do like sessions, like these live sessions. I think he's using it in that live session with Tiger Army on Paiste. And he said it worked fine there, but in the big world, it wasn't sounding. It wasn't doing it. And it, by the way, it's a beautiful crash cymbal. It's in the 1694 gram range. That's what it is, 1694. This is actually lighter than most of the Armon rides that are out there. I was looking online yesterday because I was trying to see the comparison of a few. And the Armon ride weight-wise goes from 1694 all the way up to 1900 I've seen. So that's a little bit heavier. And this has got like kind of a crash sound. It's actually, I have a 19-inch Sabian AAX Studio Crash, which basically is their thin cymbal. I bought that way back in 2002. Another friend of mine who had an endorsement got me that cymbal because it was custom. And because they weren't making the Studio Crash back then. And it weighs about 17, the higher 17s closer to 1800 grams. So the weight of the cymbal affects the thinness, and the thinness affects its crashability, I find. And this is super crashable. But it has a certain definition to it. Now, I don't know if I'd want that definition for certain things, you know, certain dark things. It's kind of a quieter, darker thing. But it's nice to have this option right now to go to that, have this 19 crash ride over here, and I have this other crash ride, which is a 19, this is the Carope. So this kind of cuts a little bit. So your ears definitely hear different things is where I'm going with this. Now as far as this cymbal, I believe this high definition, this might have been the Bill Stewart cymbal. And if it is the Bill Stewart cymbal, which I think it is, I have a good friend of mine named Scott Hazen who had one of these, and he bought it because it was the Bill Stewart cymbal, and it was a dog. He didn't like it either, and his bandmates hated it too, and I think he still owns it, but he can't seem to get rid of it. He wanted to trade it for the Carope when I got that. He said, "Oh, you want to trade?" Nah, I don't want that now. So I don't know. I've had some. There are cymbals you think are really cool, but you put that ride cymbal in Bill Stewart's hand, it's a different ballgame. Bill Stewart plays the snot out of that cymbal. I've heard Bill Stewart in New York City play once at the Village Vanguard. That cymbal sounded awesome there. So maybe his has got a different weight. Maybe his has got his tuned to his ear, what he hears. All I can say is cymbals are very personal. Old school way of doing this was you took your cymbals, your crash, your favorite hats to the drum shop and you went and picked out cymbals. I didn't do that day in New York, but I did go through about 40 cymbals to get to this one, to find this. This one I bought off the shelf at Interstate Music, and it sounds great. It just paired up perfectly. That was a nice mistake. You know, this one Mike gave me pairs up great. Matter of fact, the second I hit it at Culture Room in Fort Lauderdale, I touched it with my finger. I said, "Wow, that is going to fit in with these Zildjians perfectly." It was a perfect match for my setup. So this one, it's perfect. But again, old school says you got to go try them out. So don't always take the recommendations on YouTube. You got to go listen to them. All right. You can think you want Caropes, but you got to go listen to a bunch to find the one you want. I happen to be lucky that there was only 2 Caropes in the store. I didn't like the first one, but I liked this one. I took that one. I got lucky with this one. It matched. So anyhow, thanks for the question, Mike. I really do appreciate it. I hope you see the show. I mean, it's been so long you might not. So, but somebody else might have learned from this. All right, Mike and Ning Rains. Mike and Ning. Hey, thanks for watching. Hey Earl, love watching your show. Always very informative. I have a couple of questions for you on the next show. Question number 1. Just ordered the new Rogers Dino Matic pedal. I just wanted to get your opinion on it. I'm a huge Rogers fan. And the second question is, I heard you mention a couple times in previous videos that you really like mahogany wood shell drums. From what I understand, most of the inexpensive 1960s beginner drums were made in Japan. All had mahogany shell constructions. I think they were called Luan mahogany, correct me if I'm wrong on that, from Japan. I just wanted to get your opinion on those. I picked up a 5x14 gold sparkle made in Japan Supreme 60s era snare drum and brought it into the studio. The engineers loved it. We used it on a couple of songs. Thanks, and keep up the great work. All right, Dino Matic pedal. Love that pedal. I actually was trying one out at Maxwell's Drum Shop in New York City this past January. It's about $200. It's got all kinds of cool adjustments. The reason I was looking at it is I bought the Tama Classic hardware, and Tama Classic hardware also has a pedal that's kind of similar to the old Swivel-Matic pedals, the Roger Swivel-Matic with the adjustability. It doesn't swiv. That's why even the Dino Matic doesn't swiv. The swiv concept of the Swivel-Matic was you could actually turn the footboard a little bit with your setup so it turns instead of being straight on. There's no pedal like the Swivel-Matic that turns as far as I can tell. Maybe there's some Schlesman pedal from Australia might do it, but there's none that most people commercially use. Like DW doesn't do that. Even Tama doesn't do that. Anyhow, I looked at the Tama pedal at Steve Maxwell, and it was such a small little beginner pedal, it looked like to me. It almost looked hokey dokey to me that I didn't dig it. And I said, I'm not spending $100 for that. But then I saw the Dino Matic pedal. Gosh, it is so cool. Bells and whistles. Very cool pedal. The only thing I didn't like about it, it didn't have a strap, because the original Swivel-Matic had a strap. But other than that, you can get past that with the chain is more durable anyhow. But the reason I haven't pulled the trigger on that was I was looking at the new Tama direct drive pedal, which is really sweet too. So if I was in the market for a pedal today, I'd be looking at the Dino Matic or the Tama direct drive, and I'd be basically looking at it. Right now I've got 6 or 7 pedals, so buying another pedal is not really in the marketplace for me. And the pedal I'm going to use today at church this evening at 5 o'clock is going to be my good old 1980s Camco pedal with the round sprocket. I think it's like second version of it that they made, and I love that pedal. And it fits into the case with the classic hardware, which weighs about 21 pounds to pick up. So that's why I bought it. Now, as far as the old Japanese drums, yeah, they are the thing to find today. If you can find an old Stewart kit, US Mercury Pro, or one of the Pearl options. I mean, different parts of the country had different kits that all came from the same place. Pearl was making a lot of them. Tama made them too, the Star line. Yamaha made them, but Yamahas were marketed as Yamaha. But the real cheap ones were Luan Mahogany, I believe. And I think it was a vertical cut too on the wood versus a horizontal cut, if that makes sense. That's kind of a DW terminology, vertical, horizontal plies, you know. But those drums sound awesome with the right heads on them. They do. The hardware is garbage, but if you find an old kit, use them. The guy who's made this kind of the trend now is a guy named Aaron Sterling. He's a session drummer in LA, and he went out on tour with one of those old Japanese kits from the 60s with John Mayer a bunch of years back. And once he did it, everybody started wanting to do that. So a lot of the trendy guys are now going for those kits if you can find them. I'll tell you, a more trendy thing to go is find a fiberglass Pearl kit. That's trendy. If you can find an old 70s fiberglass Pearl, take the wrap off of it. Those drums kick butt. I have the fiberglass concert toms. I was getting ready to sell them, and I've been using them on videos. I love those drums. Just waiting to buy some heads now. That's my next thing. But thank you, Mike and Ning, for the question. Appreciate that very much. Sorry it took so long. Laurie Jones, another fan and friend. Hi, Earl. Thanks for Thanks for your informative show. Thank you for answering my question. I have an obscure question, one that I have been puzzled over a very long time. Little Feat fan. Little Feat, the song "The Fan." What time signature is it in? It is so syncopated. Also, what times of day do you prefer without disturbing neighbors, the rest of the family? Love the show. Have a brilliant weekend. Very thanks from Wales. I will tell you, I did the research for this before the last time I tried to do this show. I believe it's in 7. But you know what? I may have to go back and listen to it again. I think it's in 7/4, if I'm not mistaken. But I haven't listened to it before the show. I just pulled the questions from the last show. This was August 12th. I apparently made this set list. And I think I may have blown this one because I didn't listen to it. I can't really talk about it. But I will say I'm a Little Feat fan. It wouldn't surprise me if it's in 7. Richie Hayward was an amazing drummer. As far as playing, what time I play, my studio is separate from the house. I've got a separate 3-car garage, office, cabana house off the pool. Sounds like I live on this big Florida estate. It's really not. It's old world Florida in a very interesting urban part of town. But there is this one street with 3/4 of an acre property, which is kind of interesting, and had this kind of really strange garage on it that was carports converted into garages and stuff. So I don't really bother my family at all. I could play into the night and probably never get in trouble. Matter of fact, my son used to have jam sessions out here till 1 in the morning and nobody ever called him. I also have neighbors that like to play their music loud. I never bother them. They never bother me. So I happen to live at the end of a dead-end road on a canal. Needless to say, I don't have an issue with that. But I usually play anywhere between 7:30 in the morning. Once in a while, I'll start playing brushes or something, goofing around before work, or right up till 10, 11 o'clock at night sometimes when I'm doing a session out here. Sorry about the fan. I'll try to work on that one. Bill Morehouse. So Bill comes in and checks out my Ask Earl Anything. He's another one of the guys that usually asks lots of nice, cool questions. And Bill Morehouse was also on Kelly Komatsu's show. He was one of the second or third guests on Kelly Komatsu's show. I watched part of that. It was right around, everything happened right around the time of my son's passing. Everything. I was on the show, on Kelly Komatsu's show, probably 2 weeks prior to my son passing, beginning August. I actually talked about child rearing at the end of the show with Kelly. And that meant a lot to me saying that, because I talked about the importance of letting your kids grow up and what they do, and got a short period with them. Didn't realize I was talking about how short it was going to be with my son. Did not realize that day. But I meant every word of that, so I would say check out my interview on Kelly's thing. Check out Bill's on it. And a lot of you guys, Zach has been on there, Zax Drums. Jeff Holden's been on there. I watched that. I just saw Stephen Osborne's on there, Steve Cox. I can't remember all the guys that have been coming through. I caught bits and pieces of the show. To be honest, I have to go back, like many of you do with my shows. Kelly's shows are really long, but they're really cool. Kelly does a great interview. So I recommend his show highly. Check it out. All right, here's the question from Bill Morehouse. I have a question about rim clicks. Basically, it seems like the approach is to place the head of the stick against the hoop on one side of the drum and then whack the rim on the other side. I'm learning that the answer to many drum-related questions depends on what kind of sound you're going for. That being said, is there a right way to do rim clicks? All right. Is there a right way to do rim clicks? When I got this question, I was actually in New Jersey. I was with my friend Dave Jones. And Dave Jones is a worship leader in New Jersey, good friend of mine. He has a son named Zach Jones who plays with Great Big World, a lot of people in the Brooklyn scene in New York City, and he's played on a couple Sting albums. That's his claim to fame, I would say. Probably the biggest thing he's ever done. He also has done some Broadway shows. Zach's about 31, 32 years old right now. He was born the same year my daughter is, so I guess we're at 32 this year. Somewhere around 32. Zach was playing on a show, and Zach played his rim clicks the way I taught him how to play rim clicks back in the early days, the way his dad taught him to play rim clicks, because his dad asked me that question many years ago. I always put the butt end of the stick on the rim. Now, I don't push it up against the other rim, because that's really thin sounding to me. Okay? I usually move it in more into the, I would say probably a couple inches from the rim, more towards the center. And I'm looking for that fat sound. And if you move it around a little bit, you'll find the sounds are a little different. Now, I usually stay off the lug, but sometimes the lug kind of sounds good. Today this lug sounds really good. So I'm usually on top of the lug or below the lug. Okay? Now, the reason I brought Zax up was Zax was doing that on this Broadway show. He was subbing for another drummer, and I think he's gone back to do the show a few times because the conductor said to him, if I don't talk to you about these notes, you're not coming back to the show. It was his first time on the show, and that's what his dad told me. And he said, here's one of the notes. Your rim click sounds like you're using the butt end of the stick. I don't like it. The other guy uses the front end of the stick. Now, I don't know. I don't really like the front end of the stick. It's not my thing. I think it sounds hugely different. That just seems fatter to me. So I use the butt end of the stick. That's another reason why that other question everybody asks me, why do you always use the butt end of your stick? It's because for the ease of doing that. Because back in the old school way of playing, a lot of times you're doing grooves. Put the snare on. Okay? I think there's a huge difference to it. Also, I think the problem is the front end of the stick you actually get closer to doing ended up being a little more inconsistent because the stick tapers at that point. Is there a right way or a wrong way? Depends on the sound you're going for. Boy, that was a cop-out, wasn't it, Bill? With that being said, that's my approach. My approach is the back end of the stick. But I would say definitely not on the back rim. That's way too thin for me. Sometimes I move it up further. So it's finding that sweet spot. That's a little Latin thing. We kind of rub off the top tom, pushes away a hair. Get a flam. Kind of interesting flam thing. I kind of dig it. That was a freebie. Nobody asked that question. I just gave it to you. Anyhow, Bill, thanks for watching the show. I do appreciate it. And thanks for the question. The next question comes from Sunagoowie. He's a new subscriber or friend. He said, why do you play your China right side up? Now, the video he's talking about probably was the Paiste. Today I've got the Swish Knocker over here. That's up right side up. Swish Knockers traditionally are played right side up because they're more of a ride cymbal. Matter of fact, if you watch guys like Peter Erskine likes to play his swish cymbal right side up, and he goes to it. You know him, Jeff Hamilton, John Riley. They go to that swish cymbal. Mel Lewis. They go to that swish cymbal like on shout choruses or sax solos. You know, they go into it. It's kind of a different sound. Kind of pushes it a little differently. Now, why do I play that 18-inch Paiste China up, right side up? I actually like the sound of the Paiste China up, right side up better than flipped over. I've had Chinas that I play flipped over. I've got a Tosco thin China, really cheap China. It's over there in the pile somewhere, or it may even be behind me right now, that I love playing upside down. It sounds best upside down. It's got a really, matter of fact, let's see what's here. Well, this is the Paiste. What I'll tell you about this Paiste China, it's almost a straight across. It doesn't have any bend to it. So let me get the difference. Don't go anywhere as I rumble around for a China cymbal. Here's another one. Yes, I'm here. Got a few China cymbals you can hear. Got a few. I had that other one out the other day too. Where'd it go? Hold on a second. I think I found it. All right. Okay. Let's get adjusted on seat. I don't know if I'll chop into this. So, this is the Tosco. And if you look at this Tosco, you see it kind of bends down. It's got a nice slope, and it's kind of wide. It's a couple inches there. Okay? This is your traditional Wuhan. This is really a China cymbal from Wuhan, China. This is the Jeff Holden version. He sent me this. I won it somehow. Anyhow, it's got that same lip, but it's way more nasty. This is the Paiste. There's actually no bend. It actually hits the curve here and it goes straight. And for some reason, that to me, I don't know. I don't like it upside down as much, but I like it. I like the ga sound I get off this cymbal this way. So I tend to play this one flat. But if you watch me in, actually I've got some drum covers. I did this one drum cover. It's called Morning into Dancing by James Ward. I actually had this China on the concert tom kit right over here. And that particular cymbal right over there kind of worked that day. But I have a tendency to like to play this one flat because it has to do with that edge, believe it or not. So that makes a big difference to me. Anyhow, something to think about when you're thinking about picking China cymbals. But that's the reason for that. But China cymbals can be played either way. All right, just to let you know. All right, Jorge St Jorge, and I haven't seen George doing any videos either lately. We got back in for a bit. I hope he's still around. He said, "Oh man, that feel that you get into the song was wicked. What a fast-paced beat. You kept it up for a long time. Amazing, brother. My right hand would have fallen off and gotten carpal tunnel in the first 2 minutes." I don't know if that's a question or not. I think he was giving me a compliment. This was on the video, the Allman Brothers video, Jessica, where I was playing and I was just kind of riding that thing hard with the stick. Going down. Here I go. I think it was something like that, one of those beats. I haven't played that in a while. That was done right at the end, right at the beginning of August. You can tell I've been digging this stick. This stick's been in a lot of videos lately. You'll see a lot of videos coming out with this stick. I am chewing this to the end for some reason until I break this thing in half. I don't know. It seems to be like it just feels great stick, but I don't want to get rid of it. It's one of those things for me. All right. The next one. Jav Hav. Jav Hav. J-V-H-A-V. You have the beat. I wonder why you repeat the 2002 Thin Crash in so many songs. Is it some kind of a favorite crash for me? That's a good question. I guess if you looked at my whole catalog, you wouldn't see the 16-inch 2002 crash in any more videos than a lot of my other crashes, but I have been favoring it lately. It's been kind of like it's a cymbal I've been digging. Matter of fact, on my concert tom kit, I got a boom stand over here, and I've got one of those cymbal springs on it, those Aquarian cymbal springs, and when you hit it, it kind of bounces a little bit. I love that cymbal right on that, smacking that bad boy. But when it's on this kit with this extra cymbal here, this is where the 16 sits. So this is kind of a favorite cymbal setup of mine. 2 crashes, ride, crash, and my China. I don't know, something came in. Angel got his wings, as they would say. If you watch It's a Wonderful Life, I recommend that movie too. That's a good movie to watch to really start to be grateful for your life. I mean, it's one of those places I go to very often, especially as we come into Christmas. It's a Wonderful Life is really important. You just don't realize how we affect each other in this world and how much each of us has a purpose in this world. And that sound just reminded me of that, you know. So, anyhow, I don't know. Does that answer your question? I hope so, because I don't really have any other reason for using that crash cymbal. All right. I think this is one of the newer questions. This came in. Last couple weeks I started to get questions again for Ask Earl Anything. So, Earl, love the show. In your opinion, could a mix achieve better clarity and separation if identical cardioid condenser mics like CAD C9s with apostrophe S were used on each tom, overhead, hi-hat, and mic? I feel the dynamic mics that come with the drum kits packs are making the kit sound washed together instead of isolating each drum. Thank you in advance. I'll give you my truest answer. I use dynamic mics for a reason, like the 57, or this is the Audio Technica AT25 Pro mic, or this is a Sennheiser 421, which if I had 5 of these, I'd have them on the kit all over the place. This is a great kick drum mic, great floor tom mic, great tom-tom mic. It even works as a snare drum mic. It's a great vocal mic. This is a great rock vocal mic. A lot of rock guys use this back in the day. So the Sennheiser 421 is one that I recommend. Now, I've done the condenser thing on toms, and I don't find the isolation to be better. I find it actually to be worse. Most of my condensers, especially the small pencil condensers that are not really super expensive, don't have the hypercardioid capsule. And without the hypercardioid capsule, you're actually picking up everything around you and behind you a lot of times. So even if it's got a cardioid, it's getting a lot except for the rejections right about here, dead behind it. So you have to really place your mic in a certain place. How I get my drum sound, because there's all kinds of bleed on these mics. My drum sound that when I use for YouTube is gated. I gate my toms. Now, in the old days when I was working on an album project and mixing a project for somebody, I would take the individual tom hits and cut away all the noise. I am back because my camera died yesterday. And of course, I was on my way out to do church yesterday afternoon, so I didn't have time to come back and get the last 3 questions, and 2 more questions showed up today. So this show is going to be long. It's going to be a long one. Hopefully you all will get your questions answered, and I will be caught up for the months of August and September here. I'm finishing up a question on miking, and I'm not sure exactly where I left off, but I was talking about why I choose dynamic mics over a condenser mic for the toms, and I was talking about the idea of gating the toms inside the DAW. So my method is to gate the tom mics, these mics, in the DAW, because there's going to be bleed if it's a dynamic or a condenser. Now, do condensers sound better than dynamics? I don't know if I really got into that yesterday because I didn't really watch too far. I just found out where I left off. But let's just say it this way. I think you can get a great drum sound with a good dynamic microphone. If you want to eliminate the bleed, the gating is probably the way to go, or doing what I call hard gating. And hard gating would mean you go into the DAW, you find the tom hits, and you cut out all the extraneous snares and kicks that are in cymbals that show up in there, which takes a little bit more work. But if I'm doing an album project, I do that. When I'm doing drum covers, I go to gates and setting gates up to actually take out the sounds. So that way I don't have the snare bleeding in on my high tom mic. I put a gate on it so it shuts the snare out and the cymbals and kick, and all I get is the tom punching through, and that's why my toms sometimes really punch through on my mixes. So that's my concept. I do believe dynamic mics are better than condensers, but again, if you have the right room and the right condensers, and you can have a lot of fun. I think the CAD C9s you're talking about probably aren't going to be that much better. They're not going to be better than a 57, let's put it that way. If you're talking about using AKG C414s, yeah, those I see them sometimes on like really high-end studio sessions. I'm sure they get a really cool sound with that. Or taking something crazy like a C12, an AKG C12, which is like a tube microphone, or like a $3,000 tube microphone, or U87s or U67s, Neumanns. those are really kind of cool. But if you're using like kind of a lesser condenser mic, I don't know if you're going to get that same richness you're going to get with those other mics. Plus, if it's a really expensive condenser mic, do you really want that tom hit that's going to be at high sound pressure levels to bite through that capsule? Probably not. So most guys are going to go with really high-end dynamic microphones like 421s, or the Sennheiser's got some really nice mics. Other Sennheiser mics like this, the Sennheiser mic pack, the 604s, I think they are. Those are some cool mics. Audix has got some mics that are cool too. By the way, I was referencing an Audix mic yesterday, and it was the D6. The D6 is an Audix mic. I don't know if I got into that segment or not, but I was talking about that for the kick drum, getting that punchy kick. Matter of fact, you know when I talked about the Audix mic? It's on my next question, so let's go to my next question. My next question was from Zax Drums, and Zach asked me a question: do I change my beaters for different sounds on the kick drum? And that's where I brought up the Audix mic, the D6. I don't change my beater on my kick drum very often, but I do occasionally. And here's some circumstances where you might want to change the beater on the kick drum. If I was to do a really like extreme hardcore project, my big fat, and this is a big fat kick drum beater, I've got a square beater on it. It's a Danmar, I believe it's the Zorro beater, which is a square felt beater. This is really fat. It kind of squares the bass drum. And that probably would not be the bass drum beater to pick if you were doing a hardcore project. You'd probably want wooden beaters, and you'd want to also tape some quarters to the bass drum head and make sure you're getting that really ticky, clicky sound. And then you'd want to put a D6, an Audix D6 in the kick drum to really get that clicky 3000K, 3K pop, out of the kick drum, and really get that snap. So yeah, there's a time when you change the beater, but for the most part, for what I do, the music I do, this beater works well. But I have other beaters I use. I've got round felt beaters. I've got some Vic beaters. I've got the Vic's Kicks beater with the big round ball, and it looks like a mallet. I've also got the Vic beater, which can be turned sideways and be a real thin, sharp punch, or flat, and we get a flat sound like the flat beater. I've got a wooden flat beater. I've got some wooden round beaters that I use occasionally, and I've got this beater I just got for that comes with the Dino Matic pedal, which I talked about earlier was one of my questions, which has got a flat plastic front, kind of like the DW beater, the traditional DW beater, except for it's got a spring loaded and you can flip it easily, like not doing anything but stick your hand down there and flip it and go to the felt side. So you go to felt to plastic. That gives me lots of different sounds, 2 different sounds on a gig. So like a lot of times I'm doing my worship gig, it's on my Camco pedal. I just reach down and go to the felt when I want that kind of lighter sound, and if I want the harder sound, I'll flip it around. It gets the punch. But that's how I use beaters, Zach, just to let you know. So hopefully that gives you the answer to that question. So thanks for asking it. The next question that I missed from yesterday that got cut out was, how are those headphones, Earl? More or less isolation than the Vicks? And the headphones they're talking about are these right here. These are the DT770 Pros. They're Beyerdynamics. This is the 80 ohm version. I know there's a 250 ohm version. Beyerdynamics also makes a isolation headphone for Pearl Drum Company, which are the same headphones pretty much. Let me say this about them. I think they got great isolation. My Sennheiser headphones I use, my HD, I think they're 295s, 285s, I can't remember. I've had them forever. I wear them occasionally in videos. They've got decent isolation. But I've tried all of the major isolation headphones, meaning Vic Firth, Metrophones, Extreme Isolation headphones, and the GK Audio ones. By the way, the GK Audio ones I had were the first version of them. Since then, they've come out with the Superphones, which are really great headphones for isolation, and a lot of studio guys like those headphones. So GK Music, or it's GK Audio, I don't know which. It might be GK Music. Gordy Knudsen, used to be the drummer for Steve Miller Band. He may still be the drummer for Steve Miller Band. He makes some headphones. He's been making them for about 25 years probably now out of his garage. And he puts Sony 7506 drivers in his headphones. He basically takes a pair of isolation gun muffs and sticks headphone speakers into the headphones. But I'm not a big fan of the Vic Firths anyhow, to be honest. The second version that came out of the Vics are better than the first. I have a pair of the first, and they didn't last very long. The Metrophones kept breaking. The earpiece kept losing the water. It had kind of like a water gel kind of thing in it, and it would just come out, so I'd always buy replacements, and I got tired of doing that. So I'm not a big fan of the drum isolation headphones. I would rather use a pair of in-ear monitors. And in-ear monitors would be anything. The ones I use are the kind that are actually molds for my ears, and that would be my 1964 ears custom in-ear monitors. I got triple drivers. I bought them in 2014, ordered them in the end of 2013, got them for $400. I think now triple drivers cost you about $600. But anyhow, if you want real isolation, go with the ear molds. They're really good. But as far as the headphones go, I think these are just fine. They're just fine for what I do. And by the way, save your ears, so I recommend having a nice pair of gun muffs. This pair of gun muffs I've had for a long time. They're only 24 dB down, but I've been using them forever. I bought them at Sports Authority in the 1990s somewhere. Somewhere around the 1990s, I started practicing always with headphones on. So when I practice just drumming, it's with headphones on. When I'm doing a cover, I've got headphones on. I try to keep the mix as low as I can get away with. In-ears will keep your mixes lower. I don't recommend turning it all the way up with in-ears. You're going to definitely blow your ears out. That's not cool. So, all right, and that was that. The one who asked me that question was Return to Energizer. Return to Energizer asked me a question about the headphones. Thanks for the question. So I had Adam Wisdom ask me the question about the condenser mics, and Zax Drums asked me the question about the beaters, which leads me to two questions that came in yesterday after I did my Ask Earl Anything segment, and I found out that I didn't finish it. So this comes from my friend Bryan Corey. Brian's he loves Ask Earl Anything. He asks questions all the time, and I appreciate your questions, Brian, because without your questions, we don't have a show. And he asked the question, do the flea bites on the edge of a cymbal cause cracks or long-term damage? Thanks, pal. Okay. Flea bites, he's talking about little dings that come in the side of the cymbal. Usually that indicates you dropped the cymbal somewhere onto something. Not always. I don't think cracks necessarily start from there unless you see a crack from when it dropped. So if there's not, it's just a little ding. It's probably not going to cause a crack. The problem is if you dropped it and you did have a slight hairline crack that you didn't discover, then you will get that edge crack. All right. Most of the edge cracks come from guys doing this, coming down on cymbals straight on. If you come down on your cymbal straight on, hard, you will break cymbals. Now, I have very thin sounding cymbals. I like thinner cymbals. So I've learned how to kind of glancing blow them. Glancing blow means you're not coming down straight on. Every once in a while you'll see me come into it, but usually I'll sweep away too. Alright? So hit with a glancing blow and that'll save your cymbals a lot. Also, if you hit like on the cymbal like this, like straight on it, you're more likely to crack the cymbal there too. So be careful. Now, of course, if you're riding, you're going to be riding in it that way. So there is times where I get on it, but I'm not bam, bam, bam. I'm not coming full force on it. So that has a lot to do with if you crack a cymbal. The other place you crack cymbals is when you really tighten down on a cymbal. You'll crack the cymbal at the bell. That's why I don't really like to tighten down the cymbals too much. except for splash cymbals. And then I like to crack the bell on splash cymbals, apparently, because I've done many of them. But I really like the sound of the splash when it's choked off. It kind of has natural choking on it. That and China cymbals. I will always choke China cymbals too pretty good. So, but that's how you don't break cymbals, if you don't choke them. And my last question comes from Sal D'Amato, the rhythmatist. Rhythmatic Sal D'Amato. Rhythmatic Sal D'Amato. I had to read that the right way, Sal. Sorry about that. And you asked a question that Zax Drums actually answered for me. He kind of knew the answer, that I have 2 drum kits set up in the studio at any time. But I actually have 3 drum kits. And by the way, this Gretsch drum kit is my main drum kit. I've had it since 1979. I have 6 toms for this kit, an 8x8, an 8x10, an 8x12, which is here, a 9x13, a 14x14, and a 16x16. And at any point in time, you'll see any combination of my drums up here. Least seen is probably the 8x8. Most seen is usually the 12 and the 16. Today I've got the 12 and the 14 up. I do like 10, 12, 14, 10, 12, 16, 10, 13, 16, 10, 16. Okay, those are common setups for this. Kick drum is a 14x20 Gretsch, 1979 Gretsch drums. My old kit's 1979, except for that 10 and 8x8. The 8x8's 1981, the 8x10's 1980. But yeah, I added that later. When I bought the kit originally, they wanted to sell me the 10. It would have been a 6.5x10 at that point, before the power tom thing really hit. I didn't want the 6.5x10. I did not go for the GAD sizes, but a year later, the GAD sizes were the hip thing to get. I bought an 8x10 for the kit. Love it. I use it a lot. My other kit that I travel with is more my gigging kit these days, is a 14x18 Gretsch bass drum from 1980. It's a it's a maple shell drum, and it looks maple, so it's the maple color. The toms I use with that is a 6.5x10 concert tom that I converted to a double-headed tom. I drilled the lugs for them on the sides. It's a 6 lugger, which is kind of oddball for Gretsch, but Gretsch put 6 lugs on their concert toms, 5 lugs on their 12s and their 10s. Okay, it's kind of a Gretsch thing. So my 8x10's got 5 lugs, but this 6.5x10's got 6 lugs. The next tom is a 12, an 8x12. It's a 1960s 8x12 tom that I use. Usually I don't use them together very often, but once in a while I do. The 8x12 has got the 5 lugs on it, and it is a round badge from the 60s that I bought that we ripped the wrap off, and my friend Scott Hazen actually finished it. He finished all those drums in some way or the other, except for the 14x14, which when I got the kit back from my friend Scott originally, it had a 6.5x10 concert tom, an 8x12 concert tom, which I sold on eBay, an 8x12 tom, a 9x13 Slingerland tom that was cut down from a 13x13 Slingerland tom, which, by the way, if Scott had kept it a 13x13, it would have kind of been kind of cool for me, and I probably would have kept that drum and the 14x14 Slingerland floor tom he had. One day I got tired of having a Slingerland floor tom. It really did sound quite different than the Gretsch. To me, my ears, it was 5-ply with reinforcing rings from the 1970s. I basically said it was time to get rid of that drum. So I sold that on eBay, and then I bought a Catalina maple shell that did not have rims on it, but had the lugs left on it. And I bought that shell and put pearl die-cast hoops on it, both sides, because I could have got Gretsch, but I got pearl. I found them in the Interstate Music catalog, and it gave me that Gretsch maple sound with die-cast hoops. I think Gretsch's drum sound is really die-cast hoops. So I also bought a set of the pearl die-cast hoops for the 6.5x10, which kind of made the kit sound more Gretschy to me, more maple Gretsch, traditional maple Gretsch to me. My drums are not what they call USA custom. These drums are all, vintage drums, so it was before they ever had that delineation back in the day. I got the drums. My other kit is a concert tom kit, which again is a pieced together kit. It's got a Gretsch bass drum with Ludwig lugs on it, which my friend Scott Hazen gave to me. And he had actually drilled some pearl lugs into it and left holes in it. Great 14 by 22 inch Gretsch shell. Love the shell. So I had an old Ludwig drum that was really bad shape. I stripped all the hardware off it, put the lugs matched perfectly in the holes, put that on the drum. But it's a Gretsch bass drum, because Gretsch bass drums have a certain sound to them, and it's got that silver sealer in it, so it's a Gretsch bass drum. It's got the Gretsch tag in it even, so it's a Gretsch bass drum. He kind of finished it in a dark wood, and I had a floor tom that had that dark wood look to it at one point in time. It was a Ludwig floor tom from the 1960s, 1967 or 8. And I eventually put blue sparkle on that and put that together with a club day kit that my friend Alan Levine gave me, which I no longer have. I gave to a church. That's another long story for another long Ask Earl Anything day. But that club day kit is in one of my videos, me just doing soloing and riffing. I love that. I love that kit. I'll leave it alone at that one. But anyhow, that 14 by 22 inch bass drum I kept, and I bought some Pearl concert toms. Actually, I didn't buy Pearl concert toms. I traded 2 Paiste 602, old 602 60s cymbals, a 19 and a 20, to my friend Dan at DMR Custom Drums, and he gave me a 6.5 by 10, 9 by 13, 10 by 14, 12 by 15, and 14 by 16 concert toms on stands. The 6.5 by 10 didn't have the 12 with it, and I went out on eBay and found an 8 and a 10, another 5.5 by 8 and a 6.5 by 10, and bought that on eBay for $40. So I spent $40 total for the drums and traded 2 cymbals, and that's how I got my monster kit, my Hal Blaine lookalike kit, because all of those shells, those pearl shells, were white when I got them. But all of the wraps were kind of beat, so I ripped the wraps off. They were just taped on, so it was really easy to take off and peel off, and I left them fiberglass. And I've had them that way for a good 12, 13 years now. I originally thought I was going to paint them black and turn them into a Steve Gadd kit. That never happened. Put bottom heads on them. That never happened. But one day I may find the 8 by 12, and one day I may find the 5.5 by 6, and I would have the full 8 concert toms. But right now I don't have that, and it doesn't really matter. I don't use them that often, and when I do use them, I use them 3 or 4 at a time. That's pretty much what I do. I have done a couple covers with 6 toms, 8, 10, 13, 14, 15, 16. Even had one with a floor tom. I did one on Arthur's theme, the theme from the movie Arthur with Christopher Cross. I used that kit on. It was really kind of cool. Sounded great too. Anyhow, those are my drum kits. Sal, thank you for the question. Thank you all to watch Ask Earl Anything. This is a long one, and this is kind of like 2 different recording segments, and I seem a little rushed. Yes, I am a little rushed, because I know this is going to be 50 minutes to an hour, and if I get people to actually watch this for an hour, that's a big deal. I know that. Anyhow, I want to also say this hat, it's my son Matthew's hat. You see it in videos now. It's very special to me, and I again want to thank everybody that's been so kind to me on YouTube during this season of getting back into the YouTube game. I'm not fully here, guys, just want to let you know. I'm just taking steps forward. You never ever come out of one of these things where you lose your kid that you will not have that with you for the rest of your life. By the way, there will be more Matt songs coming out. I'm actually going to be working on some of his music and recording covers of his music. So as I start to reproduce some of it, and some of it I may new produce some of his old songs with other artists. So I have a whole Matthew Earl Bennett project in my brain, and it probably is going to take a couple of years to pull off. But if I get the right people around me doing it, I think it'll be really cool. So that's one of my plans to do. So hopefully in the future, some of you will get to hear some more of my son's music. I'm going to end this show like I began the show with a clip from 2000. I wish it was 19. It was 2008. My son at the time was probably, oh gosh, he was 20. must have been 24 years old, 23 or 24 years old, and probably 23, maybe 24, not sure. He was still in college though. When Matt was in college, let me say this about Matt. When Matt was in college, Matt got me to become the drummer for a lot of his popular music performers, and that were in the popular music program at Palm Beach Atlantic University, where my wife teaches at. And the pop music program didn't have a lot of drummers. They had a lot of songwriters and that kind of stuff going on in the pop music program. So Matt's friends would come down here and record sometimes. I have some music from Matt during that era too that I plan on putting some drums on. But one artist, her name was Jenna Tauge. Now it's Jenna Tauge Boswick. She got married. Was good friends with Matt, and I recorded an EP down here. And she actually sold the EP at the recital, and we did about 2 or 3 of the songs from the EP at the recital. And she actually videotaped the recital, and she sent me a copy of the videotape after Matt passed away. And I took one of the songs. It's a song called Heart in the Kitchen. And Heart in the Kitchen was a song that she wrote for her dad, who was dying of cancer. And this was about one day they spent on a Saturday basically playing guitar all day. Probably one of their last times playing guitar all day long. And they were just sitting there and they sang, and the whole song's about singing and playing music together. And to be honest, the song really touches me. It's a song that touched me because my dad had just passed away when we recorded it, and after I realized what the song was about, it made me cry that day when I was recording the drum tracks. But even more than that, it means a lot more that I have a video of me playing part of that song that you'll see. You only see part of it, but playing that song with my son Matthew, because Matthew dragged me into so many recitals that I did for his friends at college. I must have did 3 or 4 final recitals. I did recital seminar classes. I remember playing George Benson songs. I did my son's recital, of course. So much music I did with my son at college. Those were some of my best years, from 2006 until he graduated in 2000. I guess winter 2010 he graduated, because my daughter graduated before him in 2010, and then she got married. So it's my marker. But that was such a great period of time. So anyhow, I hope you enjoy the ending and the beginning of the show. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being part of Ask Earl Anything. Your questions make the show. Without questions, I don't have a show. I hope to do a show soon again when I get a few questions. Thanks a lot for watching. And I hope you made it to the end. Please like and subscribe, whatever that means. Have a great day. Bye.
Thinking only briefly.